MovieWeb.com.
Well, speaking of that, I wanted to begin by asking you about actually casting Joe Pesci in this role, because obviously it's, you know, sort of a throwback to some of Casino, some of his other films, the similar characters, the setting in Las Vegas. So was there any sort of trepidation as a filmmaker about casting him in this type of role?
I never thought of any other actor to play Charlie Bontempo than Joe Pesci. There's an antecedent. This is inspired by a real story. There was a fellow named Joe Conforte, peripatetic, small Italian from the Northeast, who came to Northern Nevada and had an American dream. He was a taxi driver, but his dream was to legalize prostitution, and he did. Now think about that. You have 200 years of Americans' uptight Puritan ethic, and he was able to do what nobody else had done. Interesting, indefatigable spirit, and I thought Joe Pesci is the guy who has that. I was less interested in I didn't want him to play the cold-blooded killer that he was in Goodfellas or in Casino. You know, yes, he's an Italian from the East. But, you know, Joe Conforte wore a cowboy hat and he had the Jersey accent, but he affected this kind of cowboy thing up there. You know, his customers were truck drivers and cowboys. And he was part of that. He loved the West. And I just, you know, Joe Pesci hadn't acted in 10 years. It wasn't because he wasn't offered things. It was self-imposed exile. He finds it painful to act, you know, very difficult. And he just said, to hell with it. And I went to him and I said, I wouldn't let him say no.
What was the campaign like to sort of get?
Well, I went to his house. I'd sit down. You know, he'd read the script. I talked to him about it, and I think we formed this relationship till finally he said yes. Now, the thing is, he could be resistant. Joe can be very resistant, but once he commits, he's there 1,000%. I mean, he is totally there, completely came in, grabbed the role, and I think he got to levels. See, the thing is, yeah, this guy, you know, had operated illegally for a long time. He'd been to prison. He knew how to survive as a little man. You see a little bit of that in the picture. And he's a man, you know, and I think there's the quotient that comes to play at the end of this film. But at the same time, Joe gets to levels of emotion in this film I don't think you've ever seen. And at the end, it's about a man who has actualized his dream. He's got what he wants. He has a license to print money. He has a monopoly on prostitution in the United States. People came from everywhere to go there. But inevitably, he'd forgotten about what was most important to him. And he was about to lose that. You see him come apart. And I think those are the levels of performance that I think are really interesting. It's a role Joe Pesci hasn't played before.
Is it a Shakespearean tragedy in a sense?
Well, at the end of the film, you see his world falling apart. He has actualized his dreams. He's a big man. He puts $100 bills around his cigar and smokes them. He's showy. He always wanted to be a boxing promoter. He wants to promote a world championship fight between Muhammad Ali and Armando Brusa, you know, and he thinks he can do it. And this will take him to new heights, and everything falls apart. It falls apart because at its core, his marriage that he always had taken for granted, and his business, which he took for granted, is coming apart. And to see that crumble and see this man have to deal with that is, I think, fascinating. It's the case with all the characters in the film. They're all confronted. They're all cynical professionals that thought they were incapable of feeling any kind of real emotion and passion anymore. They're beyond that. And I was using it as a premise to say, what happens when three people come together and the chemistry explodes and it rocks them emotionally? They, for the first time, actually deal with love. They thought we're well past it, and they're reborn in different ways. But I thought that's worth going after.
So then I actually wanted to just ask you about the importance of casting Sergio in this part as Armando, because you need an actor who's not only physically right for the role, but can bring that emotion that he did so well.
The most difficult role to cast in this movie was Armando Brusa. He's the heavyweight champion of South America from Argentina, very distinct place. He has to get in the ring and really exhibit this animal strength that the antecedent, Oscar Bonavena, had. He was called the Wild Bull. So that's the physical quotient. At the same time, he's hiding things inside on an emotional level that he's got to reveal. Incredible sensitivity and pain. Not an easy quotient, a recipe to find. I had to look all over the world, and I also wanted somebody who would be real as a South American. I found an actor in Madrid Sergio Pettis Manchetta. Now, he comes from an acting guru. He trains with an acting guru who's very famous. He's got another couple of famous pupils, Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz. And in this instance, Javier is the older, Sergio is the younger. And I think the idea of introducing him in America in this role, I hope, is going to be the springboard to a great career, because this man is dedicated, he's incredibly talented. He's physical, all right? He was the captain of the Spanish rugby team when he was in college. So he's physical, but he never was a boxer. I put him in Gleason's gym in Brooklyn. He trained with a great trainer, pardon me, excuse me, a great trainer, Jimmy Glynn. And in that instance, he learned boxing. He gained 35 pounds for the role. He comes in that ring, and you believe it. But when it comes down to revealing what the pain is inside, why he can't go back to South America, he reaches levels of sensitivity that I know are fantastic. When you can stay on the screen with Joe Pesci and Helen Mirren, two of the great actors of their generation, really great, and come out equal, you're good. And I think Sergio has a great career ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he has some very intimate scenes with Helen in the film, your wife. Was that difficult to direct as a husband, as a director? Were you able to sort of separate the two?
I have directed a lot of intimate scenes in my films. I expect any actor who works for me to reach that level of truth, whether there's a dialogue scene or a sex scene. You have to do it. And for me to go in and say, oh, this is my wife, keep your hands off of her, would be ludicrous. I mean, it has to work. And so my job was not to tell Helen, I know, is going to be there. It was to Sergio to say, Sergio, I'm here behind the camera. Don't pay any attention. In fact, you got to go for it. If you don't, we're going to be here all night and everyone's going to be unhappy. So don't hold back, go. And I think they knew it. They created great things. To me, that pleases me. I'm not going to be sitting there behind the camera going, oh, my wife is, No. I want, as an actor, for her to deliver, for him to deliver, and for us to have a great film. It's an acting scene. That moment in the film is it's a major milestone. It's a catalyst, turning point in these people's lives. You got to get that scene to work just like you got any kind of scene to work that's important in the story.
Yeah. And was she nervous at all when you mentioned this role to her, when you brought this to her with
Well, it was
what?
Well, it was interesting in the sense that I have been looking for something to do with my wife for a long time. She's turned things down. She didn't like the part, or I was offering her a part in a movie that I was already making that was too small. And it was a challenge, and I thought, hey, time is passing here. We've been together 26 years. I better find something. We worked together at the beginning, and now we're... So when I brought her this role, after she originally said, well, that way you think of me? I should be a madam in a whorehouse after I've just won the Academy Award for the Queen? But I knew that there were things in this role that were truly wonderful, that she had never played before. There are levels of toughness at the beginning, because a madam has to be tough. She has to be the disciplinarian. She has to control those women. And at the same time, she has to be somebody who's their friend and listens to them. And most of all, as a woman, at the beginning, she's playing somebody who's shut off to any emotion. Her emotional life and her romantic life is over. And you see it. She's unhappy. To see this reawakening, is a great challenge for an actor. You can do a certain amount with hair and makeup and costume. No. It's that inner life, that rediscovery that happens, that Helen does so beautifully in this film. And the last part of this film is really a message to people, that are out there. It's never over. It's never over. You can always reach in, and that's a great message to have. This is not a film that could be made by a 20-year-old. It's a point in my life and a point in these actors' lives where you see this process happen, and I unabashedly deal with emotion. I'm not afraid of it.